Hello, everybody.
Shalom, Rabbi.
How are you guys?
I'm doing great. I
Excellent.
heard you saw my friend the other day.
Yes. Yes, I did.
That's nice.
I did. Okay. So what's going on, guys?
I'm actually very surprised and a little sad that a very good friend of mine just announced he's moving to Israel. So I don't know how to feel.
I mean, the thing is joy. Joy is
Yeah,
the word.
I'm proud of him, but at the same time, I'll miss him.
What's good is that Geller is also moving to Israel, so you can, your friend and Geller can hang out together.
You'll have to introduce us, Shlomi.
I was actually talking about Geller.
Oh my
Surprised you guys missed
gosh,
that.
that's so crazy.
That's so
I'll tell
unclear.
you, I have many emotions about Geller moving to Israel. In fact, it's made it onto our family calendar, and including flight information and everything else. But the main emotion that I have at this very moment, not before. I have a lot of emotions about Daniel moving to Israel, but the at this very moment, it's one of joy that he's going to have to stay up this late as well to join this class now. So that is the feeling I have just at this moment. I have many other feelings, pride, joy, you know, but that's one emotion, is that this feeling of absolute exhaustion that I have it's very funny because there are many nights that I'm up this late, but it's for some odd reason it exhausts me the entire day thinking about how late I'm going to be up. I don't know what it is. It's all mental. But it's like and any other given night I'll be up this late. It's not like a big issue, but it's like just the thought of having to be up, like knowing that I have to. It's just but I'll tell you guys, you know what I just did? This is I was very happy, very cool. Is I just There's an organization called Amudim, which is like for mental health and different things, and uh, and Amudim is having, this is really cool. I would set this on your calendar, because it's so cool. I don't know what they usually do every year, but because of COVID, so they for their annual fundraiser, they try to come up with something like really unique. So what they're doing is 36 hours of content on Zoom, but the 36 hours is like all different types of people on every subject, from like famous musicians, celebrities, and like all panel discussions with these people, like from movies, they have Torah scholars, like it's unreal. So they wanted to have something on politics. So the person that's running the whole thing asked me what I thought. So one that's saying with Jewish and politics, and like saying that every people, so I just did, and they tape the sessions like weeks in advance. So I just taped the session with Rabbi Lightstone, like interviewing Rabbi Lightstone. So I'm not allowed to talk about what we talked about because that's only for December 20th through the 21st. But it was pretty cool. And then while like we had this whole session, like it took forever to put together. But right when we're done with the interview, he's like, is the recorder off? So we look to see, because we're not running it. It's not like I'm doing it now. It's like the company's doing it. It's like, yeah, the thing's off. He's like, check the news. You'll see why I was late. So the first flights, commercial flights from Israel to Dubai, I think on El Al, are supposed to take off tomorrow morning. So people have like the flights booked, and the problem was that Saudi Arabia had yet to give flyover rights, and the UAE said, if Saudi Arabia doesn't give flyover rights, we're not going to let the plane land. So, and if the plane's obviously not going to be able to land, then they're not taking off. Then no one's taking off. And you don't play chicken with an airplane in the air. So like, they weren't even allowed to fly around. Like the UAE didn't want to have anything to do with it if it wasn't, and that would have been like, so he's like, oh, check the headlines. By now it should be out. So I look at the headlines, and it's problem solved. Like the headlines was Saudi Arabia gives like flyover rights. So it's pretty cool. But in any case, yeah, so that I am a lot to say. Okay, let's start off. First of all, hello, Maya. I don't know you, and welcome. But maybe I do know you. I'm sorry, but if I don't know you, do I know you? But your mic's still off, so you don't know if we know each other. Okay. Do you live in America? Like, look at your house. You live in America.
I do. I do.
Great. No, we like Americans. It's a
I do
unique
live in.
thing for our American program here. But where do you live, if I can ask, and to put you on the spot here in front of everybody?
I live in Wellington, Florida.
I like Wellington. Okay, great. Okay, Ariana's pointing to herself. Do you know Ariana? Is she the one that convinced you to come to this? Yes. Okay, great. Okay. I assume that's a yes, but your mic is back
And
up.
Talia Rockmacher.
And Talia Rothmacher, who is conspicuously absent. Okay, great. Okay, let's start off this way. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Oh, wow, this is a first. Unless people are waking up. If anyone, we like to start off if anybody has any questions. Anyone have any questions they want to ask? Nothing. Nothing. Anybody see anything? Yes.
Oh, I actually have a question, Rabbi.
Yes, go ahead.
I was thinking about this for the past couple of days, and let's say Israel the state of Israel wants to make more inroads with people that are progressive. This isn't me like asking a political question, like from like my standpoint. Just asking in general. People that are progressive generally tend to argue in favor of Palestinians rather than Israelis, if it's a pretty surface level understanding. How would Israel make inroads with that group of people when it's so often that the largest and loudest critics are champions of the progressive movement, like Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar?
So it's a great question. I'm going to bring up one of Rafi's good friends as an example here. There's a new member of Congress who's actually in the district in Queens, right next to AOC, and I'm going to give a little background for everybody. Who's a progressive African American gay man. He checks off many progressive boxes. Okay, and he happens to be incredibly pro-Israel. He's going to be a freshman member of Congress on January 3rd, and very pro-Israel. And he says, in the many articles that I've seen and interviews with him, that it's specifically his progressive values that make him pro-Israel. So let's explain what that means. Let's explain what progressive values are. Okay, you have conservatives. Let's start there because many people feel that they're conservative. Conservative means that you like to conserve what's happening now. You want to keep what's happening now. You don't want anything to really change. Okay, that's what conservative is. So you like the fact that, let's say, civil rights, right? In that sense, civil rights should stay the same. You don't want that. You don't want, let's say, gay marriage to be allowed, right? You want to conserve the values that America has, the values of marriage that are between a man and a woman. That would be an example of a debate. Conservatives don't want abortion to be allowed, right? Because abortion wasn't allowed for years, so they don't want it. So they conserve, right? The idea is conserving things that the way they used to be. Okay, conservatives also believe in limited government. They don't want the government to be involved in too many things. Okay, so that's what a conservative is. Then you have a liberal. A liberal is somebody who is who doesn't want to conserve. They want to see things advance. They want to see things change. Okay, that's a liberal. So they want a woman to have the right to choose because they're more into personal autonomy. Okay, so that would be more of a liberal. Then you have a progressive. The progressive is a different political being. A progressive is somebody who wants to see progress on social justice. Now, everybody wants to see progress on social justice. Like anybody wants to see things go backwards, right? But they aggressively want things to move. Okay, so progressives will constantly push the envelope on new ideas, right? So whatever a progressive is never okay, yeah, right. These things used to, right, 100%. And by the way, you should just know that America's definition of all these terms, I'm using American definitions for these terms, are not the same in Europe. A liberal is a conservative in Europe. Go figure. Okay, but those are just the terms. But we're using American terms here. So a progressive wants to see things aggressively change in a very quick mode. And a progressive, by definition, will never be happy, because as soon as they progress in one area, then they want to move to the next area, right? I don't mean they're not happy as people. I'm saying they're never satisfied. They're never like okay with what the government is, because then they'd be conservatives. So progressive is always looking for things to change. So you get free healthcare, and then they want college loans abolished, and they want free tuition for college, and they want to constantly change things in order to improve people's lives. Okay, while conservatives are like, whoa, hold on a second, let's consider. Okay, that's the idea. Now, Shlomi's right that when you look at the average progressive, they're going to tend to be pro-Palestinian and not pro-Israel. And the question is, why is that, and should it be that way? Okay, so let's explain why it is, and then let's explain if that's really the way it should be. So progressives generally will look for the people that are suffering, right? That are having trouble, okay? And then they'll want to progress society to help them, right? That's how progressive works. So if you look at a superficial look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? So Israel is the country that has wealth. Israel is the country that has power, and Palestinians have neither of those things. So if you're a progressive and you say, okay, I'm always sticking up for the guy that's suffering, so Palestinians seem to fit that bill, right? What progressives aren't looking at a lot of times is, well, what's the cause of the suffering? What's the cause of this situation, right? So when progressives start to like scratch below the surface and they start to take a real honest look at things, even AOC, right? Because like AOC gave a really like it was a well-known interview at the very beginning of her congressional career, and she said something along the lines of like, we have to help the people in Palestine because of this. And then the interviewer happened to be somebody that was very familiar with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and was very pro-Israel, and like sort of like challenged her, pushed back on her, and said, well, wait a minute, that doesn't fit with like progressive values, what you're saying. Like you should be more on the Israel side. And she's like, you know what, truth is, I'm not really an expert on this. I don't want to talk about it. And for like a year, she didn't say anything on Israel, right? Nothing on Israel, okay? Because when you start scratching the surface, if you have somewhat of an honest and intelligent approach to it, you'll start to realize what this Richie Torres, who's the congressman that we're talking about, what he came to realize, which is that if you look around the different countries around this region, and you look at, let's say, comparing Israel to Saudi Arabia, okay? So, right, those are the two powerhouses in our region today, okay, right? You have Saudi Arabia has tremendous wealth, tremendous power, and Israel. And let's say you even compare it to Iran, which is the next big power, okay? So let's say you put on a chart, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, right? The three big powerhouses in our region, and say, okay, which one really promotes social justice and progressive values, right? So let's see, in Saudi Arabia, if you're a woman, you're not allowed to drive, right? There's a woman on trial now in Saudi Arabia. She's an activist. Her whole thing was that women should be able to drive. She's on trial for being a traitor and a spy now, okay? And even Saudi Arabia doesn't say she did anything other than try to get women to drive. Okay, so if you're a progressive and you're looking at this and you're like, okay, well, that was America like over 100 years ago, right? So clearly Saudi Arabia has a long way to progress, right? Iran, if you're homosexual, they'll hang you, okay? Tel Aviv, homosexual capital of the Middle East, right? That's not so hard to get high on that list because you look around and everybody else is hanging homosexuals, okay? Now, I'm not in favor so much personally. I don't think the Torah aligns with many of these progressive values. But at the same time, if you're looking in Europe and you're talking to a progressive, and this is where we get to what things should be, right? If you look at an honest like approach to this, free healthcare, education, right? Helping out the poor, equal rights to just simple human beings. If you look around and you start to scratch the surface there and compare Israel to the Palestinians now, right? So the Palestinians don't have elections. They don't have elections. It's 15 years since they've had elections. And you ask a progressive, okay, is that really what you're standing for? You look at it, homosexuality is prohibited in Palestinian Authority. This is your progressive values. So somebody like Richie Torres, who's honest and doesn't have to play what's called identity politics, where you have to check off boxes to make sure that you line up with everybody else, looks at Israel and says, okay, that's my values. Now, what's amazing in this region, is that if you're conservative, you'll come to Israel and you'll come to the same conclusion, because Israel also has conservative values. We're heavy on defense. We're heavy on liberty. We're heavy on the right of life, right? We protect life to a great extent. So what's amazing about Israel is that since Israel isn't like locked in to one political value system over the other, we have a lot of things that are socialist about us and a lot of things that are capitalistic, right? We're the Silicon Valley of the Middle East and other places. So you have all these different competing values in Israel, and it all meshes together, right? So everybody could be happy and upset equally. That's the great thing about this country. So Shlomi, to answer your question, a progressive really should be pro-Israel. And if you meet a progressive and a progressive's like, no, you understand, I'm progressive, so I'm anti-Israel, I'm pro-Palestinian, you'd be like, well, first of all, just so you understand, I'm pro-Palestinian also. I don't want anything bad for the Palestinians. I want them to have a good life. So I consider myself pro-Palestinian, as you should consider yourself pro-Israel. But let's look at the facts. What are the values that you stand for as a progressive? And now let's compare those values between the Palestinians and Israelis and see whose side you should be on. Let's look at that. Any honest discussion like that, where you're not debating, but you're just saying, let's make a checklist. Tell me the things that you value, and let's see which of the two countries, right, or peoples, best reflect those values. It will be a 5-minute conversation. If the person's not honest, then there's nothing you can do. You can't have a rational conversation with somebody who's not honest, because they're not honest. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Good. Okay. Any other questions here? Let's go on to the next question. Who's got a good question? Come on, guys. That was an excellent question. Let's get the ball rolling here. Good questions. Continue. No one has any good questions here? Okay. Let me ask you this. You ready? Tell me. I'm going to give you three choices here. Okay. This is what they call a Sheila Amerikait in Israel. There's a multiple choice for some odd, stupid reason. It's called American questions. No American can ever understand it. Okay. Tonight I had a birthday party for my son. He's 12 years old, and the kids, the 12-year-olds, all said that this is the most American birthday party they've ever been to. Why? It was a surprise party. I have no idea why that's American. We had a piñata, which is Mexican. Okay, and we told my son that he was going to be getting a surprise present, blindfolded him, and gave 4 of his friends a plate full of whipped cream, and then they put it in his face. And then they said that was the most American thing they've ever seen. So I don't know. Here they have a distorted view of what actually is American or not. But in any case, that's one of the things about this class is half about teaching you Israeli society. So Sheila Amerikait, which is multiple choice, which is greeted with the same exact excitement as American students have for multiple choice questions. So here's a multiple choice Sheila Amerikait for you. Okay, am I describing a movie from the year 2015, which will be named nameless, this week's current events, or a television show called Tehran? Okay, you tell me. A machine gun is planted on the side of a road and is operated by remote control, which assassinates a nuclear scientist. Is that A, a movie from 2015, B, current events, or C, the new television show Tehran? So Talia is giving 2, B, everyone's saying B here. Yes, it's true. It is a current events. Geller says C for sure. Okay, so I can only imagine. The only thing that comes to mind when I see these stories is that there's somebody in the Mossad who's thinking to himself, I gotta make money after I have this job. Now it turns out Mossad agents are actually paid very well in Israel, but I have to think to myself that this guy, whoever's coming up with newest ideas in the Mossad on how to kill people, is thinking to himself like, no, you thought the movie was good and the TV show was good. Watch this. We're gonna top this. Okay. The top nuclear scientist in Iran this week, okay, on Friday afternoon, was driving to a vacation spot. He was going away for the weekend. And now, if you're the top nuclear scientist in Iran, you obviously have tremendous security, because you might as well just be buying all your shirts with like the Target logo on it and having a bullseye on your front and back, because you just know you're somebody's sniper scope at all times, right? There's somebody whose job it is in the Mossad to say like, okay, on any given day, how would we kill this guy? So while there are many simple ways of killing people, especially as Israel has proven, they decide to just like outdo themselves this time. And what they did was somebody no one's going to ever know how they did this. Okay. And the Mossad in Iran are some of the most creative people ever. I mean, the stuff that they've pulled off that we know about. Okay. Now there's stuff that, is it for sure Israel? No, they're thinking Israel, New Zealand. They're not really sure. There's a big debate going on. Yeah, it's Israel. There's no one else no one else would want to do it this badly, and no one else could do it this bad, this well. Okay, this is like they might as well have had like Israeli flags like flutter down afterwards, like or Bibi Netanyahu pick up the phone and call the Ayatollah and be like, no, I don't know, I was sleeping. Now, truth is, Bibi was on the beach, which is another. I don't know if anybody saw it. We'll discuss it afterwards. I'll try to find the video clip because it's hilarious. But in any case, someone planted a machine gun on the side of the road that was automatically activated by a satellite that fired at the nuclear scientist, killing him. Now that's impressive. Come on, right? We're not even talking about a drone. Okay, they had an automatic machine gun, like powered by a satellite. Okay, that killed. Now, but here's the crazy thing: next to him in the car is his wife. Not a shred of glass hit her. Okay. Her husband is murdered by a remote control automatic machine gun off the side of the road. She's sitting next to him and she's fine. There's like blood all over this road. There's like pictures that came out. Okay. The car is done. I don't know how the bodyguards are killed. She's fine. Okay. She is fine. I don't know if like she knows someone in the Mossad. I don't know if she called them up and said, "Hey, don't hit me, please." I don't know what you have to do, but it is. Is this the video you just sent, Rafi?
Yeah.
That's the kid video or the
No, that's the kid video. I don't have the one of the remote control
the
car.
remote control one we don't have yet. So in the video you really have to know Hebrew in order to like really get it. So but where was Bibi at this time? Because this is just as good. Can I play this if I click the link? Hold on, let's see what happens if I click the link here. If it'll play off the thing. I don't know how to do this. There's another time, but you can watch the video later. But it turns out that Bibi, and this is like not the first time, it's been a couple of times. Bibi's been going to the beach a lot lately. Okay, he has a house near the beach. So I think this was on Shabbat afternoon, and Bibi was at the beach, and Bibi is not yet Shomer Shabbat, and so he went to the beach, and he was sitting on like a cliff above the beach a little, it looked like almost like in bushes, somewhat like just enjoying the beach, but obviously not getting down to where anybody would see him. And he's got like these bodyguards wearing shorts and t-shirts next to him, okay, standing up next to him. And this 9-year-old kid named Uri is walking and separates from his family and goes up the mountain, like to just to walk up. And he's got like, I guess, I don't know, he's a 9-year-old with his own cell phone, I don't know, and he sees Bibi Netanyahu sitting there. And so the full video, the one that Bibi posted from the kid doesn't like show us, but the full video is the kid is trying to get his family's attention down the mountain. And he's like, "That Bibi Netanyahu, Rosh HaMemshala." He's got like this high-pitched voice, and like Bibi's just sitting there, like you could see, like trying to get the kid like away from him, but Bibi engages with the kid, and it's hilarious. But the best line of all is right when the kid starts the video. I mean, this is the greatest line ever. Right when the kid starts the video, he points the phone at Bibi, and he says in Hebrew, he says like, "Say hello, Bibi. Say hello, Bibi." And it is the funniest thing in the world. It's great. So in that case, that's where Bibi was while the satellite was taking out the nuclear scientists in Iran. But to get a little serious here, why are we killing nuclear scientists, right? Now, amazingly, some people were critical of the killing of the nuclear scientists. They automatically did not blame Rebecca. They did not blame New Zealand. They automatically blamed Israel. Israel never takes credit for these things. Israel just says, like, we don't comment on dead nuclear scientists that were trying to annihilate our entire people. That would be below us. Yeah. But what people are saying is that the most ridiculous comment came from two of President Obama's former advisors, who thankfully will not get positions in the Biden administration. Okay, and they said that the reason why Israel did this, in coordination with the Trump administration, was in order to hamstring the Biden administration from getting back into the Iran deal. Not only does that not make any sense whatsoever, because this only strengthens Biden's hand to be able to negotiate better, because now Biden can go to them and be like, listen, guys, you're down a couple scientists. Let's get real here. Now it's time to negotiate before the Israelis pick off the rest of your team. So that doesn't make any sense. But also, we don't kill people trying to kill us in order to create better political situations for Israel. It's like ridiculous. Okay, we kill people because they're trying to kill us, and we feel if we kill them first, we'll live longer. Okay, that's why we kill people. So in order to build a nuclear weapon, you have to have, I'll take it 1 second, Rebecca, you have to have the know-how to make a nuclear weapon. There aren't many people that know how to make a nuclear weapon. And I imagine a lot of people that know how to make a nuclear weapon aren't competent enough to actually make one. So you have to have all of those things combined. You also have to have leadership capabilities, managerial experience, right? These are things that are very difficult to do. So when you find a person like that who has the know-how, who can manage a team of scientists, who can create a nuclear weapon, who also believes that you should use nuclear weapons against innocent people, right? So if you can find that combination of an individual, that person will probably do very well in a maniacal, dictatorship like the Iranian fundamentalist Islamic regime. Okay, that's good qualifications. Those are good resume builders and characteristics for a job, right? Morality would not help you. So this person wasn't just a scientist; they were a general in the army, because Iran's nuclear program is not civilian based; it's military based, because that's what it's going to be used for. So when people are like, "Oh, you can't just kill
It's for
scientists,"
research, Rabbi. I'm sorry to
What?
interrupt you, but it's just for research. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's research, right? So in their underground, 25 stories below the ground, nuclear facility, made to try to figure out, how we could use isotopes to help dogs get over the COVID. So instead, when you're a military person and you're designing a program which has been called the way that we're going to annihilate the Zionist regime, don't be surprised if an automatic machine gun controlled by a satellite kills everybody. Okay. So let me get to Rebecca, and then I'll get to your question, Jordan. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead.
Yeah, you answered it. I was gonna say, but like, doesn't like other people like have like his like plans and stuff and could do the same thing? Like, I was gonna ask, like, does killing him actually like stop the building it in a way?
Right. So some people criticized his assassination by saying somebody will just take his spot. Yeah, like that would be true if he like served ice cream, right? You could find somebody else to serve ice cream, or even if he was like a general in the army and just a general in the army, you could probably take the next colonel and promote him, right? Or her. Well, it's Iran, so him. But so you could definitely you could do that. But like a nuclear scientist, right? Like, no, there aren't that many nuclear scientists, right? These are very few people, who have unique skill set that are not easy to replace. This guy was the number one guy for a reason, because he was trusted. He was aligned in values and priorities and objectives, right? And he knew what to do, and he knew how to manage a nuclear program, right? This is at least 3-4 years ago, when the Mossad went into Tehran and stole 2 truckloads worth of written material, which again, no one has any idea how you go about doing that, except for the Mossad. So this guy's name was one of the names that Bibi had on screen, Like, this is the bad guy, right? His name is all over these papers. You know, if my name was on any of those papers, I'd be terrified right now. You know, I'd be investing in as much Kevlar and bulletproof everything I could possibly find, and like never leave my house more than I wouldn't because of COVID. You know, like because then you know you're on some hit list now from the Mossad. So yeah, so that's what yeah, you can't just, this does help us tremendously because it sets back their program. Their main guy is gone. You know, take just as an example, and please don't use this in any other way than an analogy. But imagine if your school, somebody shot the principal and killed the principal, right? Now the school would stay open the next day, right? But it would set the school back because the principal has a unique set of skills and is able to lead the place. Same thing as a rabbi of a shul. And again, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that you should have violence towards any of these people, but any type of like leading person, when their job flips, it sets back the organization somewhat, all the more so something as serious as a nuclear reactor. Rebecca, do you have a follow-up or a new question?
No, follow up.
Okay, go ahead.
Like, is Israel like preparing now? Like, they're scared like for retaliation or not really?
Yeah. So every Israeli embassy has been put on. It's very hard to hit Israel within Israel, right? Without starting a war. Now, Iran could fire missiles at us, but that would start a war. So what they usually do is do some sort of terrorist act outside of Israel. You know, so they'll usually hit a school, a JCC in Argentina. That's usually their modus operandi. So every Israeli institution has been told to beef up its security. In certain places which are more vulnerable than others, meaning they don't have as much local help, the Israeli personnel has been told not to travel. Really, they've been told to just stay at home. You know, so yeah, we'll have to see what's going to happen. Something that's not known so much. When after America assassinated Qasem Soleimani with a drone strike in Iraq, who was the head of the IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guard. So when America killed him, so everybody thought that there wasn't a retaliation. There was a tremendous retaliation. Just President Trump was very good at playing it low key. Iran bombed an American base in Iraq within the week, and over 200 American soldiers suffered tremendous brain trauma from it. Right. It was, and I don't know what type of weapon it was that they used, but American soldiers knew that it was an incoming bomb strike. And even though they knew there was an incoming bomb strike, it still tremendously hurt them. Okay. So there's something like 200 American soldiers that are seriously injured from Iran's retaliation. So Iran does retaliate. It's just the media never picked up on it and never ran with the story. It's very weird how our vision of things is so skewed by what we are exposed to as opposed to what really happened. Like, for instance, and Jordan, I know that you have a question, but for instance, last night, a chemical factory, it's like the 10th chemical factory that this has happened to in Iran, blew up yesterday. Okay, so right, it's a huge fireball. I saw a picture of a huge fireball, but because that doesn't make the news, right? We kill one nuclear scientist. It's the top story for like 5 days now, right? But 3 days. But when you but like a massive factory was blown up yesterday, and like, I don't know, did anybody hear about it? Right? It's like there was like one Iranian that I follow had taken a picture of it and posted it on Twitter and said, by the way, this thing went up and blew up last night, and like it's like the 10th chemical factory in Iran that's blown up in like the last 6 months, and nobody's like paying attention to this. Why is nobody noticing this? So okay, Jordan, let me check out your question here. Is a nuclear bombing by Iran a legitimate fear? Wouldn't a nuclear weapon in Israel kill thousands of Palestinians? Also, if Iran were to do that, the U.S. would probably bomb them too, right? Okay, so good questions, not silly at all. Yeah, Iran, it's interesting because, right, you'd think that there's so many Arabs around, people would be hesitant to bomb Israel, yet we see that Israel's enemies never have that problem, right? Hamas fires rockets right and left into Israel. They kill Arabs as well as Jews. Hezbollah, about 10 years ago, fired a couple thousand rockets into Israel, into an area that was heavily in the north part of Israel, heavily populated by Arabs, and they don't have great aiming. They don't have like radar or anything else on these rockets that helps protect it. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who used to be the president of Iran, famously said that he would be willing to give up 40% of Iranians. I don't think he included himself in that number, but 40% of Iranians in order, if it would mean wiping out the Zionist state. meaning if there would be a war that would come out of this, but Iran would win the war, but at the expense of giving up 40% of Iranians, he was okay with that. I don't know why 40%, not 45%. I don't know where he drew that line, but he had said the line that he had said was 40%. So they're not so worried about that. Would America attack? It's a very good question. I don't know. I don't think that if American interests weren't attacked themselves, if America would attack Iran if Israel was bombed. I don't think that especially President Trump, who's so hesitant to use force, I don't know if he would do that. And I have no idea how Joe Biden feels about war. I don't think anyone knows. He's never been really in a position where his decisions on wars have had consequence. One of Bob Gates, who was President Bush and President Obama's Secretary of Defense, famously said that Joe Biden has been wrong on every single foreign policy matter in 40 years. That he's never once, including like he was the only voice that said don't hit bin Laden. He has some famous pieces of advice that he's on the record for that has been wrong for the Iraq War. Interestingly enough, right? So like different things that he's never been right on any foreign policy decision. So yeah, I don't know where he would be on this. I have no idea. But I don't think that Israel should ever take, and Israel doesn't take this attitude that, oh, America will have our back militarily. Israel's never felt that way. Meaning that we've always felt that we have to defend ourselves. When American presidents have always said, like, listen, we want you to take this risk, and we'll be there for you if you take that risk. Like, we'll have your back on it. Israel's always said no. Israel's always said that we're in charge of our own defense, and we're never going to outsource that to anybody. Okay. Next question. Rafi.
Hi, thank you. Everyone in the American political spectrum, with the exception of Rand Paul, I guess, wants a nuclear deal with Iran. President Trump said if he was reelected, you'd have it within a month. Sadly, we'll never get to see that deal. And there's a lot of the people who've worked for Trump and who worked for Obama under his administration that say that there's going to be a deal in the Biden presidency. What's a good deal, and can they get it done? What would be like a good deal, and can the Biden administration work with whatever Israeli administration will be to procure a good deal?
Yeah, so a good deal would be one that would actually stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons with an inspection regime, meaning inspectors that would be allowed to go in an effective way to inspect, meaning that there would be no limitations on where and when they could go, which is not true under the deal. There would be no what's called sunset clause, which allows Iran after a certain amount of time to start again redoing things. There would be let's see what else on the nuclear front. That would it would get rid of all their centrifuges and nuclear material, right? The things that make the nuclear material into weapon grade stuff, and it would you would have a stopping of allowance of developing ballistic missiles, which are missiles that Iran does not need for its self-defense, right? They're only offensive missiles. High caliber, highly sophisticated missiles that can pinpoint spots within Israel, right? So we want Iran to not develop those missiles and to stop sponsoring terrorism. That would be the Iran deal that everybody would want. Okay, that would also require Iran to completely capitulate and appease their enemies. It'd be very strange if that happened. Yeah. So that's the problem. President Trump always had a great amount of confidence in himself on making deals. I don't know how well placed that was. I don't think that history has borne out that he was able to make the deals that he thought he would be able to. Okay. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to end now because that'll get me into relaxing mode 6 minutes earlier than usual. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, next week we should be on. I'll let you know if for any reason I can't think of why we wouldn't be. Yes, and again, congratulations to Daniel on finally becoming on moving to Israel. And may all of you join him one day. And may we all, Geller will be in Bidud for the next 6 weeks, which means quarantine because Israel's gonna not let him out forever. But after that, we'll see a tired Geller on this call. Okay, guys, have a very, very good night.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You, Rabbi.
Thank you.